what did we think of this fight? What did you think about it? Let's talk about it. What did you think about it? Let's talk about it. But before we get into it, before I give my take on both men, first and foremost, hats off to both of these men for making this fight happen. Errol Spence could have easily said, yo, I've been at here for this long. It's time for me to move up, and dodged each other and not made this fight happen. But both of these men got into the ring. They signed the contract. They found a way to make it happen, and they made the fight happen. Right. The other thing too is like, yo, this is boxing, man. Like I see so many different comments and so many different things. It's like, yo, anything can happen in boxing, right? Some of our most favorite fighters have lost a fight. Mike Tyson is one of my favorite fighters of all time, and he's got losses, and he's got a bunch of losses on his record. There's a lot of people and a lot of things that I'm seeing of people discrediting Errol Spence, saying he's not great anymore, he's washed him, this and that. Yo, at the end of the day, the people that Errol Spence has fought, you can't beat those guys. You can't get into the ring and beat those guys. You can't beat Errol Spence. So it's all this back and forth stuff, man. It's like, yo, appreciate the guys for what they've done. And just because they've lost the fight does not mean that they're not great. When you discredit people who lost fights against other fighters, it makes the guys who won make it seem like their wins aren't good. Right. So I don't like the fact that I see it so many times, especially this weekend, people discrediting Errol Spence and saying he wasn't good. Yo, the better man won the fight. It doesn't mean Errol Spence was not good. The man was a champion for a while, right? So let's not get too caught up in this whole back and forth stuff, man, that we forget that, yo, at the end of the day, when we get fights like this, man, boxing wins. The sport of boxing wins, not just the person. Now, with all that being said, man, let's talk about Errol Spence first. You know, it was tough to see. You know what I'm saying? And even before the fight started, man, I was watching Spence and watching his entrance. And yeah, you know, Spence is always pretty even keel, always, you know, very relaxed. But to me, I'm just like, yo, this guy something seems off with him. Like he seems a lot more relaxed than usually accustomed to seeing him. And I remember hitting my guy, Morgan Campbell, who was at the fight. And I said, yo, does Errol Spence look a little off to you? And he says, man, you know, this is Errol Spence demeanor. And I was like, yeah, you know, good point. Like, I hear you. But to me, man, he just looked very lackadaisical in his eyes, in his facial expression. And maybe I was thinking too much into it. I don't know what the weight cut was. I don't know all that he was doing in his camp. But for me, I'm like, yo, he just looks a little bit different to me, just a little bit off. And my wife, who doesn't watch boxing, she was saying the same thing because she was watching this fight and she was like, yo, is this guy high? I'm like, no, sweetheart, like I don't think that they would be high when they're about to fight, especially when you're fighting Terence Crawford. But for me, I'm like, yo, it looks off. The fight started, man, and I'm like, yo, why are you trying to outbox Crawford? Like that's not gonna work. That's not your style. That's not you. And he was just way more patient than he usually is, right? And I'm like, yo, this is a little different, more Spence than what I'm accustomed to seeing. And so the fight was going, and after the first round, I was just like, yo, this is going to be a much different fight than a lot of people thought. I didn't think the fight was going to be close after the first round. And then as the fight went on, man, you got to see, yo, Errol Spence just looked rough. Didn't look fast, right? His athleticism was not showing. The reflexes was not showing. Anything Terence Crawford was throwing at him was getting through. Literally everything that he was throwing was getting through. And if it wasn't landing cleanly, it was having some type of effect. I was just like, yo, which version of Spence is this? Right? I'm like, yo, I don't know what's going on, but yo, this isn't the Errol Spence that we're accustomed to. I remember doing a breakdown of the fight with my man Jose. His platform is called Mo Boxing, No Problems. Go ahead and check it out, man. He does a lot of great things for the boxing community, interviews, breakdowns, just a whole promotions. Does a great job, him and his team over there. And I remember we're doing the breakdown and I said, yo, what if this fight is one-sided? Like, what if this fight isn't as close as we thought? And I know a lot of people say that, but you can say it, but when you see it, it's two different things because you never know how a fight's going to play out until it plays out. And to me, after watching the first round and the second round, I was just like, yo, it's over with. I don't see Spence going to be able to make these adjustments because it doesn't look like he can even move in the ring. To me, it looked like everything was catching up to him. Everything that he's been through in the past 4 years was catching up to him. Every single thing was catching up to him, and it definitely showed. You definitely showed. Let's go real quick to Crawford, man. Yo, you want to talk about someone who was laser focused and locked in from the start, who was confident, right? Who Spence did not have an answer for anything that Crawford did. The speed was apparent. The athleticism was apparent. There was nothing that Spence could do that Crawford didn't already see coming and was a step ahead and didn't have an answer for. For the pressure, he had an answer for. For the power, he had an answer for. Right? He had an answer for everything that Errol Spence was going to do. And it showed that night, like blatantly. Right? But the mental focus that he was locked in, man. I remember the year that Usain Bolt broke the world record, man. But I was running well, consistent 10-1s, some 10-0s. I'm like, yo, this is a great year. I had an injury that set me back. So I was watching it in my apartment because I was like, yo, I got another college year. I have to rest up. I have to make sure that I am ready to go for the following year. But I remember watching the heats of world championships that year, right? And there were some other guys who were having a great year as well, too. Other guys who was running much faster than Bolt that year, right? But when they got to world championships, it's like a switch flipped, right? Usain Bolt, not only is he the fastest man, but he's the greatest pressure competitor I've ever seen in my life. So world championship starts, and I'll never forget, it was the quarterfinals, right? And you're seeing guys who are running fast, right? And they're running all out, and they're running, 10 flat and 9-9. And then I saw Usain Bolt's heat. And when he got to 50 meters, man, he shut it off. Like he shut everything down. And he jogged through the line and he ran 9.89 seconds. And I said, yo, no one is beating this guy this year. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter how fast they're running. No one is beating this guy because of how easily he made it look. And because of that switch that he flipped, Crawford had a switch that he flipped in that fight. No one was going to beat that guy that day. Like no one was going to beat this version of Terence Crawford. I don't care if you were at 154. I don't care if you were at 160. You were not going to beat this guy on this night. That's how dialed in and locked in from a mental standpoint that he was in that fight. We know Crawford has all of the intangible skills that makes him fight. We talked about it on the breakdown. It doesn't take much to look at Terence Crawford and to know, hey, yo, this guy is a great fighter, right? But from a mentality standpoint, how he was operating that night, man, he was just different that night. Not to mention, he finished the fight and he didn't even look scratched up. Didn't even look defeated. Didn't even look defeated, man. He was doing whatever he wanted to do in that fight, however he wanted to do it that fight. It was the greatest performance of Terence Bud Crawford that I have seen to this date. It was one of the greatest title fights performance that I have seen in any of my years of watching boxing, man. It was a great dominant performance, and I am glad that the ref stepped in to stop the fight. Errol Spence is too tough for his own good. He was going to get back up and continue fighting. Spence did everything that he could do, but it wasn't his night. He did everything that he could do to win the fight, and it was not his night. It wasn't his night to win the fight because Terence Bud Crawford had an answer for every single thing that Spence was planning to do, was going to try to do, right? So it was just a great fight from Terence Bud Crawford, man. And for the sport of boxing, there's no need to come in, whether you're a Spence guy or a Bud guy, to have any animosity towards either dude, right? If you were a Spence guy, if you were supporting Spence, man, you got to come together and support Bud Crawford. right? Now, I know there's a lot of back and forth between either guys and either parties, either supporters for quite some time and this and that. Yo, finish all that, man. This is the sport of boxing, man. And this is a win for the sport of boxing. Now, there's talk about a rematch. And honestly, man, I think Spence and his team has to go back. They got to watch the fight, right? They got to go through a whole bunch of physical tests, some mental tests, and just go in to see if it is going to be worth a rematch. Yeah, the money would be great. Absolutely, all that good stuff. Both of these men have made enough money now, I'm sure. But is it going to be worth it to take a rematch? Whether it's at, I don't think you would take that rematch at 147. So maybe it's at 154. But the question is it going to be worth it to take the rematch? Am I mentally right? Am I physically right to the point where I can take that rematch and win? So it shouldn't be an ego thing, in my opinion, for Spence of like, yo, this guy just beat me up. I want to get my get back. No, man, you got to make calculated decisions on this one because, yo, Spence has been through a lot of different things. And it did seem like what he's been through was starting to look like it inside of the ring. Is it going to be worth it to do that again against Terence Bud Crawford, who still has a lot of good years at this level, at this high level left in him? And if he's operating at this level, at this dial in, this locked in, this skilled, yo, it's going to be, and stylistically, yo, it's a tough fight for Errol Spence to win, right? So I think it's not about the ego. It's about, man, if I go and take this fight again, what can I change? What am I going to be able to do different? Again, I thought it was a good fight, a one-sided fight. My hat's off to both, man. I appreciate both, man, for taking the fight, man. And in my experience, just being in that professional setting of high elite sports, yo, it's not a good feeling when it doesn't work out in your favor, man. It's a lonely place. It can be a dark place. So for me, that's why on this channel, man, I don't bash no fighter. I don't bash no fighter because I respect what each person is doing. And I think as boxing supporters and as boxing fans, you know, we have to do the same. You know, you got to, if you're talking heavy and talking trash to either party, then you got to take it on the chin and take it for what it is. But at the end of the day, this is the fight that we want to see. This is the fight that brings up the sport of boxing, man. So great, great fight for Terence Bud Crawford, man. Great performance. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. Looking forward to seeing what Spence does next. He's still a great fighter, and there's more out there for him if he wants to continue fighting, man. I'm definitely sure he's going to want to. But yeah, you know, Terence Bud Crawford's night, man. I mean, there is no debate who is the best in that welterweight division and who is one of the best in this era of boxing, man. Definitely no debate about that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.